Welcome to another edition of Jack in the Booth. I'm Jack McShane. Our guest this week is Chris King. Chris has been the radio voice of New York Islanders hockey for the last 22 years. And coming up, you'll hear his thoughts about the Islanders' future plans, especially when it comes to goaltenders. But first, we talked about this season, and I asked Chris what we can expect in the qualifying round between the Islanders and the Panthers.
Yeah, I think right off the bat, two very different styles, Jack. Certainly the Islanders like to play that defensive, kind of clamp it down style. They're known for their defense and their goaltending, and goal scoring might be a little bit of an issue for them, whereas the Florida Panthers are just the opposite. They've scored among the most goals in the National Hockey League this year, but they've given up a ton of goals as well. So the clash of styles, I think, would be the start, and obviously that's driven by the coaches, and that's something that's a big part of this matchup. You're talking about the two winningest active coaches right now in the NHL, and two guys who are top 5 all time in wins in NHL coaching, and both future Hall of Famers. So, Barry Trotz is going to try to clamp it down on his side. Joel Quenneville on the other end is going to try to ramp it up and make it some high-scoring hockey. So the chess match between these two hockey geniuses, and that's a true term for both of them, will be fun to see.
Now, you mentioned the chess match between Trotz and Quenneville. The Islanders won the season series 3-0, but that third meeting was played on December 13th, and a lot has changed for both of these teams. The Islanders got Jean-Gabriel Pageau, who's really good in the power play, and the Panthers also added, I believe, Eric Howla and Lucas Wallmark, both good players from the Hurricanes. So in terms of that, do you think the game plan, do they look at those games at all, or is it just a completely new game plan? Because, these coaches have months to prepare for each other. So it's a really big chess match.
Yeah, with these guys with months to prepare. Barry's great with, hours to prepare, and now they're both going to have months. But, Barry did tell us they will look at those games. But as you said, there was, 3 games between them. Islanders won them all, essentially all one-goal games, one of them an empty netter thrown in there. But those games were, again, October, November, December. So now you're talking about 7 months behind. So, they're going to look at, I think, the body of work between the two teams. Also, Barry said he would watch, the last 10 Panther games of the regular season. Joel Quenneville will probably do the same for the Islanders. But as you mentioned, a lot of changes on both sides. Islanders with some big acquisitions at the deadline. J.G. Pageau, certainly one of them. But I think for the Islanders, even more important is just getting everybody back healthy. When they ended the season, they had gone 7 straight games without a win, but they had no Casey Cizikas. They had no Johnny Boychuk. And to me, the biggest one, they had no Adam Pelech, who, very quietly is probably the best defender on the New York Islanders. He's going to match up against the big line for the Panthers. And to have all 3 of those guys back healthy, and so far, again, they'll leave for Toronto tomorrow, but right now completely healthy are the Islanders, and that's a great thing for Barry Trotz to have all his weapons at his disposal.
Yeah, especially with COVID. I mean, that's more important than like a physical injury, even with, coronavirus and them all being healthy, be able to come back. I want to talk about the experience level for some of these Islander players. They've made the playoffs, I believe it's 4 out of the last 6 years, whereas the Panthers have only made it twice in the last decade. Now, even though both of the head coaches are really experienced, you think that gives the Islanders a little bit of an edge, knowing that some of these players have played in the playoffs, even though there's no fans, which could be a different ballgame.
Yeah, I think I do give them the edge. And again, the Islanders certainly have more players who've won Stanley Cups. Andrew Ladd, an example, has won a pair. They have Boychuk, they have Leddy, guys that have been there and done that. And they have a coach who's won the Stanley Cup, obviously, in Barry Trotz. And Florida doesn't have as many players who've won the Cup, but they have a coach in Joel Quenneville who's won 3. But, I think the experience, for the Islanders, and you have to remember, these two teams played each other in the opening round of the playoffs 4 years ago. The Islanders still have 9 guys that played in that 2016 Classic Series that the Islanders beat the Panthers in 6 games. And, the last 2 games of that series both went to double overtime. It was an incredible series. So, just to have the guys that have not only won Stanley Cups, but have been in the playoffs more often recently and lived through that great, Panthers-Islanders series of 2016 could be an advantage for New York.
But do you think maybe it gives an advantage to Florida, being that there is no fan, so there's really none of that home and away type aspect to it?
Yeah, in one sense you can say that, Jack, because certainly, the Nassau Coliseum during the playoffs a year ago was incredible and has always been incredible. And Florida, doesn't get the greatest support down there in their building. They do come out for the playoffs, obviously, but, it's not the same noise that you'd have at the Coliseum. So, yeah, that could work to their advantage. Remember, again, the Islanders do have, quote-unquote, home ice advantage in this series, meaning 3 of the potential 5 games they would get last change. And with a lot of the weapons that Florida has up front, in Barkov and Huberdeau especially, Barry Trotz is going to try to get that Adam Pelech, Ryan Pulock deep pair, get the Casey Cizikas line on the ice against them as much as he possibly can. So even though, no home fans, home ice advantage, so to speak, will still be big in the last line change for each coach.
Now, do you worry about the Islanders maybe getting off to a slow start since they haven't played with each other, in a long time, and considering that they're getting a lot of players back from injury? And what have you seen from Barry Trotz that he's been doing to, kind of speed up that process and get him back into, the game speed, because they haven't played in a long time?
Yeah, I think, Jack, they're going to be all right. Everybody's in the same boat, number one. And, Barry pretty much right from day one of, training camp 2.0, as they've called it, was right with the same lines he kind of finished the season with. He's had, very little mixing of the lines. Basically, 11 of the 12 forwards have been set, and he's kind of rotating one other guy through to see who it'll be. And most of the defensemen appear set as well. So he's got to decide on which goal he's going to start. But he's done a ton of scrimmaging in the training camp. Really, I think it's 4 or 5 now scrimmages. Yesterday was all scrimmage, no practice at all. And he'll have that exhibition game against the Rangers too, which, he's pointed that out as being very important. The fact that it's one game to try to get everybody really back in game mode. And the fact that it's Rangers Islanders, it doesn't matter where it's played. It doesn't matter who's there, who's not. It always brings out the best in both sides. So that really is the perfect exhibition game for him to have.
Now, I want to look ahead to the future a little bit. Last week, the Islanders finally signed Ilya Sorokin to a $2 million deal for next season. Now, he loses an entry-level year in his contract. Is that right?
Right. Well, they signed him to 2 one-year deals. The entry-level deal will burn off this year. And again, he can't play, as you said, but then they will have him under contract and a good contract for the following season.
Right. And he was a 2014 third-round pick. So he's been in the Islanders, quote-unquote, system for a long time. But he went over to play in Russia, and now he's finally with the Islanders. Now, what plans do they have for him? Because, Greiss is a free agent after the year, but they have Varlamov under contract for 3-4 more years. So is he going to back up? Is Varlamov going to mentor him? Like, what are the Islanders' plans?
Yeah, I think Varlamov will certainly mentor him. Again, they're both Russian, so they speak the same language, and the language thing could be a bit of a barrier for him. But yes, Thomas Greiss is an unrestricted free agent. Islanders could decide to bring him back on a short deal just in case they want to start Sorokin in the AHL, which is a possibility as well. But Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov has called him the best goalie that's not currently in the National Hockey League. And some people think he's the best player, period, who's not in the National Hockey League right now. So if you look at his career, as you mentioned, he's 24 years old, but he's played 8 years already in the KHL, which is recognized as, the second best league in the world. He's won a championship there. He was MVP of the playoffs when they won that title last year. He's won an Olympics. He's won a world championship. He's done all he can do over there, and now he's excited to come over here. And I'm sure fans have watched a lot of the YouTube highlight reels. He's absolutely outstanding. He's acrobatic. He's fun. He's intense. And I think Islander fans are going to love him. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it, whether they want to get him some time in the AHL. And again, there's still no definitive plan for will the AHL start before the NHL next season. If it does, I think you might see him there. If not, with all his experience in the KHL, I think he might be ready to, just start at the NHL level with the Islanders with Semyon Varlamov as a great mentor.
But from his perspective, don't you think for him coming over to America, he's going to want playing time right away? Or is he content with being the backup goalie? Or was Trotz keep his same system, what he did with Greiss and Varlamov, where he has kind of that 2-goalie system?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jack. Fans may remember the start of this season. Yeah. Barry alternated his goalies the first 33 straight games. So they both got a lot of work in. But you know what? So far, Sorokin has said, hey, I want to do whatever the organization wants me to do. Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz have both said he's been great about that. So, again, I think he will join them in Toronto, although he won't be eligible to play. He can be with them. He can practice with them, kind of get to know the organization. And then I think just the first opportunity they have to get him some game action, whether it's the AHL, he said he's open to that, or whether it's the National Hockey League. If they feel he's ready to, be a full-time NHLer, well, then that would be the goalie duo going forward.
Now, has the NHL set a date and time for the start of the 2020-2021 season yet? Or?
It's thought to be December 1st. Again, that's unofficial right now, but, they certainly have already set Game 7 of this year's Stanley Cup Final as the first week of October, so they certainly want to have that little bit of buffer. That would give them about a 2-month buffer. So the word is, December 1st would be the goal. Training camps would open in mid-November, and then December 1st would be the goal. As of now, if everything COVID-19-wise stays the same, to open the new season.
And then would that be the same now, continuing throughout the years, or are they going to try to go back to?
Yeah, they're going to look at that, which is, it's a good opportunity to look at it. I think, October might be too soon to start. I think, again, it's going to take a while to catch up. If they start in December, they're going to have to crunch things a little bit to get the 82-game schedule in and a full playoff. So maybe you start in December for this coming season. Then maybe you go to November to start for good. I like that idea the best, Jack, because when you open in October, which the league usually does the first week of October, you're going head to head with the World Series, and it's hard to do that. You just don't get the media exposure you want. So I think November 1st would be a better, starting date for all future seasons after they get through this one. That way the World Series is completely behind them, and, they're no longer battling for the back page with baseball every single day.
Now, staying with the future, a couple of days ago, Seattle just announced their official team name, the Seattle Kraken, which is an interesting name. They will be starting in the NHL in the 2021-2022 season. Now, from the Islanders' perspective, now we have to think about, okay, what players are we protecting, what players are we not protecting? Because they had to deal with that same situation with, when the Vegas Golden Knights came in, and I believe they traded away their first-round pick, if I remember correctly, back then. So what do you have any idea of who maybe is on the bubble, of who they may not protect? Because I know Cizikas could be an option because he's a free agent next year.
Yeah, the Islanders have a bunch of right now restricted free agents, so it'll remains to see how that plays out this year. But right now, I think it's just a little bit too far down the road to know, who they will protect, who they won't. And yes, back when Vegas was coming in, they made a lot of deals with George McPhee, who was the GM of Vegas at the time, in order to protect certain players. So you can make those type of deals where you say, we will give you A, B, C, D, and E for you not to pick players 1, 2, 3, and 4 who are not on our protected list. So again, the league gives you the ability to protect a certain amount of players, and then you can make deals beyond that with those teams. And George McPhee did an unbelievable job of, using that leverage to
Stanley Cup in the first year is pretty good.
Yeah, so. The greatest first year ever, and went to the Stanley Cup Finals in the very first year of franchise history. So I love the Kraken nickname. I think it's great. I know they're passionate about hockey out there. Matt Barzell can tell you that from playing, junior hockey.
Well, hopefully he doesn't go there.
Yeah, and it's just I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but a little too early now to say, who they might protect and who they might give up.
Now, transitioning to you, how do you plan on calling games? Are you going to be doing it from the arena, or are you going to be doing it from a studio?
Yeah, the NHL has not permitted any local TV or radio broadcasters to be in those hub city arenas. So no local TV or radio broadcasters can go to Toronto for the Eastern Conference or Edmonton for the Western Conference. So they've given us the choice. We can either do the broadcast from our radio studios or TV studios, or some teams have a better setup in the actual rink where they normally play at home. On our situation, we have much better setup at WRHU Hofstra University, which is our flagship station. So we're going to broadcast the games from there. We'll have big monitors that, we'll see the game on a monitor, but that will be strange for me. I've never done play-by-play off a monitor. It brings in a lot of different challenges. It'll be unusual, but, certainly the fact that we get to have the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'm sure we'll all adjust to it pretty quickly. But it is a unique situation to be, sitting in a studio in Hempstead, watching on a television a game that's going on, many, many miles away across the border up in Toronto.
Now, do you prepare differently for something like that? Because you may not have, as many angles or as many things to go, or maybe you do, maybe you have more. I don't know exactly how it works, but is there a difference in preparation as if you were at the arena as opposed to being?
Yeah, game prep's going to be exactly the same for me. I won't do anything different that way. It's just, again, what I'm used to, when you're looking out at the entire rink, if I'm in the building in Toronto, I can watch wherever I want to watch, any part of the rink, any part of the bench, any part of the scoreboard, that type of thing. Whereas when we're in the studio, we'll have one television that'll be the main program feed that follows the action, but sometimes those cameras are a little too tight. And then we'll have another feed that kind of gives us a static look at, 10 or 12 different cameras on the scoreboard, cameras on the benches, cameras on the game clock, cameras on the score, those type of things. So it's going to have to almost be like a little ping pong thing, Jack, where I look to my left to see the game, and then if there's something specific I want that isn't in that game, I look to my right to try to pick it up. So, I've done a lot of watching these opening nights of baseball and seen what the Mets announcers have said about it, what the Yankees announcers have said about it, and they've talked about how different it is. And, Gary Cohen of the Mets literally, sitting at Citi Field and the games at Yankee Stadium, and he said he found himself looking down at the field sometimes to see what was happening.
Right. You're so used to doing that.
Right. So at least I'm not in the arena. Again, we don't have that option as much more of our equipment is at Hofstra, so I won't have that feeling. But, I try to go to school a little bit on the baseball guys if they've dealt with it the first couple of nights of baseball returning.
Now, I've been listening to you for years on the radio, and you've kind of developed this type of enthusiastic personality that you have on the radio, to say the least. Now, did you develop that naturally, or was that something that you really wanted to do? You I want to be really passionate and show how passionate I am Do you know
Yeah,
if you're
it
going
came
against
naturally, Jack. Yeah, it came naturally because that's how passionate I am about, hockey and baseball. I do baseball in the summer. And, I've followed the Islanders since day one. I was 10 years old when the Islanders arrived on Long Island back in 1972. And instantly, I had my own NHL team. So I have that enthusiasm for it. I really do. I think because I go so far back with the team, and people do tell me that when they first see me, they say, wow, we love your energy. We love your excitement. And, it helps. I think, I've always said this, like it has to be fun on our side of the radio for it to be fun on the other. So that energy and that enthusiasm, I think, can be contagious. And now, that will be a bit of a challenge for me to keep up that level on a broadcast when I'm looking at a monitor as opposed to sitting in a building
Right.
with 16,000.
You don't have the fans to help you, is what you're saying, right?
Right, exactly. So when you're in the Coliseum and a goal's scored and, the building explodes and there's 16,000 people and the horns and the music and the yes, 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 it's easy to, to get involved in it and get caught up in it. But now I've got to make sure that that same emotion and energy is there sitting in a very quiet studio watching a television screen.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to listen to you here. Have you ever called an Islanders Stanley Cup, or were you too young at the time?
No Stanley Cups. I do hope to get to that.
Hopefully that'll be the first time this year.
Yes,
even though it'll be unorthodox, but
yes, but we'd still take it.
we would take anything at this point for that.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to do 4 championships with the Ducks. So I've been on the air for 4 championships with the Ducks. But now I do want to add that that first one with the Islanders would be tremendous. Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe, and I look forward to listening to you here call Islanders games, and hopefully they can bring home the Stanley Cup this year.
Thanks so much, Jack. Great talking hockey with you.
Thanks to Chris King for joining me on this week's edition of Jack in the Booth. You can hear Chris call games for the Islanders on WRHU Radio Hofstra University. Thanks again for watching. I'm Jack McShane.